Today we will continue with international events, so related to India also as well as India. So the issues what we are going to discuss is UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, Global Framework on Chemicals, UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, then UN Convention Against Corruption, International Court of Justice. Okay. So before going into the details, so can anyone tell among these five, what are all the binding agreements? Among the five, what are all the agreements which are binding in nature? So among these five, okay, third one, yes,
So 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4. Okay. Fine. See, in this, when you see these two, one is framework, another one is just a declaration. Okay. So naturally, these two will not be possibly a binding agreement. Okay. So whereas the Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, Convention Against Corruption, and the judgments of International Court of Justice are binding in nature. Okay. So remember, so these are these three are the binding agreements out of these five. Okay. Now we go in detail one by one. So the first one. Now it's the 20th anniversary of the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crimes. And it was celebrated in Italy because in Italy only it was originally put into force in 2003 in Palmero. And that we call it as Palermo Declaration, right? This Palermo Declaration or protocol, whatever it is, so it is a first comprehensive and it is a legally binding agreement or an instrument against transnational organized crime. So what is transnational organized crime? So any crime which occurs between nations or more than 2 or 3 nations. So in that way, the definition goes in this manner. So the UNCTOC defines transnational crime as a crime which has 4 conditions. So any one of the 4 conditions is going to be there, accordingly, it can be declared. Say one is it should be committed more than one nation, right? Or if it is committed in one state, that is nation, but substantial part of it is happening in other state. So you plan in some other state, but commit the crime in some other state. Then state here means nation. Then committed in one nation or state, but involves some organized group of another state. So everything is done in a particular state, but done from another group of state people. Whereas committed in one state, but has a substantial effect on another. So all these 4, okay, give some idea about what transnational crime is. And if any one of this condition is satisfied, naturally, it can be declared as a transnational crime. So what are all the examples? So you have drug trafficking, human trafficking, smuggling of migrants, illicit trading of firearms, trafficking of natural resource, then illegal trade in wildlife, fraudulent medicines, remember, sale of fraudulent medicines, cybercrime, all these which originate in one and done in other, we call it as transnational organized crimes. So this particular transnational organized crime and your terror groups. So it can be networked, thereby they try to do business for financing terror. Okay. So for that only we have the Prevention of Money Laundering Act and so on, so that we try to address this particular issue. So the most important thing is in India, we don't have a specific law with regard to this particular transnational crime or organized crime at a national level overall. Okay. So in this, you have specific thing, but it will be going for law and order or those UAPA kind of unlawful activities prevention. It is just a overall a national framework, but it doesn't have any specific law with organized crime. So any illegal, unauthorized activity, it comes there. Okay. So in this, they target individuals and not criminal groups or enterprises. So that is one of the major weaknesses what we have. And for all these, we have CBI as a nodal agency, whether it is Interpol or whether it is UNCTOC, all these activities, we have CBI as a nodal agency. And those legislations, what do you call, with respect to these transnational crime. So we have National Security Act and all these acts. So remember, all these acts are there with respect to transnational crime. Remember this Public Gambling Act, okay? Because all other acts you will say it is okay. And similarly, IT Act. So these two acts may not be at the time of examination. You may just slip over there. So Public Gambling Act and IT Act will come under this particular regulation of transnational crime, right? So apart from that, India is also a member in various international organizations or international agreements like FATF, that is Financial Action Task Force, under which we enacted PMLA, through which we try to monitor money laundering is happening or not. We try to stop them. We try to nab them using ED, right? So enforcement directorate. So all these are certain steps which we have, but comprehensively that organized crime, how to have a specialized, say how we had for terrorism, like previously POTA, likewise. So we need to have transnational crime, a special act, so that we can have a better actions against transnational organized crimes. And apart from that, there is an increasing drug trafficking across India. So a new, usually India is between that the triangle and the crescent. So naturally, we have that particular trafficking across India. But recently, we have increased circulation of these drugs across India also. So previously it was only in pockets, but now it is across various states and through the nation. We try to have these trafficking happening. So naturally, India needs a specific or a specialized law to deal with these transnational organized crime. And similarly, we also have extradition treaty agreements, the other legal treaties, so that in case of any offense happening, we try to cooperate with those governments to get these criminals into the state so that we can prosecute them in India. So likewise, we have all these aspects, right? So, however, the golden triangle, or what you call it as the drug triangle, what we have in East Asia, especially in Southeast Asia. So those are now becoming more a bigger market, and the crescent what we have in the western side, that is Afghanistan, Pakistan. So those area. So though previously the nature is different. The previous nature of crime is that it happened with the cultivation of poppy, right? So in Afghanistan, you have poppy cultivation where the local panchayat, Kap panchayat heads will be involving in a massive racket of cultivation of poppy. Whereas now when we see the drug trafficking or drug which is trafficked, we can see it is all synthesized. Okay, so these are all synthetic chemicals where synthetic inorganic chemicals are used to prepare these drugs. Okay, so this is completely a different scenario which we are facing, because previously it was a natural plant, cannabis, or you call it as poppy, so which has been processed, and we had trafficking in that. But now what we face is synthetic, which is more even aggravated, because it doesn't need such a huge amount of cultivation of crops. It can have a small lab from which, a chemical lab from which you can have it. So even a company which poses itself as a pharma company can involve in these synthesizing of these drugs. So this is even more serious, where uh, these shell companies can involve in massive rackets. Right? So this is one major issue coming up in India. Naturally, this becomes one of the major problems, and we have more private ports also. And so, in order see all these efforts, what we did for privatization of ports and other investments and other steps, so it all was targeted towards development of our economy in those sectors. But unfortunately, some provisions and loopholes are misused by these criminals so as to uh, abuse these provisions to traffic drugs. Okay. So this is one important area. So 20th anniversary, which can be used and also currently linked with our problems. Right. Okay. Then the second important thing is the UN Global Framework on Chemicals, which happened in fifth International Conference on Chemical Management in Bonn in Germany. So adopted this particular framework. Okay, so this is a new agreement which tries to protect the human health and environment from harmful effects of chemical waste. Right. So we have such agreements before, so which you can see here in the second part. But this is one of the things which is voluntary. Remember, it is a voluntary, multi-staker, multi-sectoral platform with around 140 countries. And their target is to reduce these waste, chemical waste and management, which are going to be around 28 chemicals to be arrested by 2030, and phasing out of highly hazardous pesticides in agriculture by 2035, and national governments to formulate the reduction policies by around 2030. So these are some of the targets what we have. So that the marine litter, the lead in paint, okay, all these. Already lead is in use for various other purposes we have seen. So heavy metals along with. So lead elimination. So we try to have microplastic reduction. So all these are targets which are there in this global framework on chemicals. Remember, when they give global framework on chemicals, don't stop with this. So you have lead also, you have microplastic also. Yeah, if one line is there, it is also there. So don't immediately think chemicals means it is just inorganic and doesn't include plastic. Okay, it includes. And certain guiding principles, what they have, it's already there. We try to have in this particular thing. So you can have these important international conventions. Already, Montreal Protocol and Minamata is in news, right, for various other reasons. And even it was in news in India that India had achieved Montreal Protocol targets earlier than the targeted years. So try to have a better understanding on these international conventions. So what are all those conventions? They can have a match. Stockholm Convention, Rotterdam Convention, Montreal Convention, Minamata Convention, likewise. And they try to have what is the actual objective of these, frameworks. Already we can see yearly, recent years, we have the reviving of such questions. Previously, it was in way back a decade ago they asked. Nowadays also they started asking. So last time also we had many such coalition too, likewise. Many such questions were there. So as the following, this question can be there. So we had previously bond declaration. That is the thing which adopted the global framework on chemicals. And similarly, you have international conference, which is conducted by the Inter-Organization Program for Sound Management of Chemicals. So try to have an idea on this, because every 5 years they conduct, it seems. So naturally, this becomes more important. Okay. Fine. And along with that, try to connect all those chemicals in news like heavy metals in news, nitrate, sulfur, you have arsenic, okay, all these in news already, okay, along with the lead. Fine. Mercury pollution is also there, but last year they asked mercury pollution because it was in news for 2 years continuously. Okay. Now, the third one is the 75th anniversary of UN Declaration of Human Rights. So it is just a declaration, and India is a signatory of this declaration. But remember that it is not a treaty and it is not legally binding. It is just a declaration which talks about different articles, the 30 articles of UN, which list down the entire human rights what we enjoy. Okay, and it was there in 1966 where the UN General Assembly adopted these covenants. So we have covenant on economic, social, and cultural rights, covenants on civil and political right, which is important, and we have the UN, UN Declaration on Human Rights, and along with these two covenants, we call it as International Bill of Human Rights, right? Fine. So in this way, you can see how relevant it is for India because India is also a signatory, and you can also use this when you write in polity mains answers and so on, Article 14 and 32, 36 to 51, and 32 to 32, Article 32 and 226. So all these are related to human rights, but here in India, it becomes a part in fundamental rights, a part in directive principles, and a part in guaranteeing that particular thing. And similarly, we have NHRC, which is also established under this particular declaration, right? Fine. So this is just a list to have a glance upon so that you can understand what all the things. Sometimes there may be some arguments in mains answer writing when you write. So you can put it that in case of in India, you find it is not still right, which is recognized. You can say that this is going to be a UN right, human right declared in 66, but in India, it didn't happen, or in India, we have it. So like this, okay? So we can say in that particular way, so that one point where you can link the declaration and the fundamental rights or DPSP can happen, where it enables your answer. Okay, just for understanding, you can see that. So many of them you can find it in DPSP or in your fundamental rights chapter. Okay, almost everything will be there, but certain things will be implied rights. Okay, certain things like the freedom from torture and so on. Okay, right to privacy, all are the implied or declared rights as part of the judgments and so on. Right. Fine. So you can have even a question. So UN Declaration of Human Rights, these are the following rights, out of which are fundamental rights. Say, for example, right to marriage is not a fundamental right in India. Right to own property is not a fundamental right in India, but it was a constitutional right. Okay. So likewise, you have certain rights which are constitutional, but legal, or it may not be a fundamental right kind of. So try to have just a small analysis out of it, with which you can have a better understanding of these rights, right? So don't by heart it, it won't work, and it's not needed also. Just an understanding you need to have. And the another convention which ends up in 20th anniversary is the Convention Against Corruption. So this is one of the important thing. It is the world's first and only legal binding instrument against corruption. Okay? So India is also party to it, and that is the reason we had the ombudsman, Lokpal, and other stuff which comes into the being. So it came in Mexico, force in Mexico in 2005, and we celebrate December 9 as the um, International Anti-Corruption Day. So all these happens. So in India, try to have the list of measures taken against corruption or try to hold on corruption. And these are some of the forms of corruption which you can use. So all these you can use in case if you are a student of public administration, you can use them directly, or in governance part you can use, in ethics part you can use. So these contents you can use. And similarly, you can use it for prelims in this way. So remember these facts. And similarly, they have 190 parties, and the secretariat is at Vienna, and it came into existence in 2005 in Mexico, right? And the declaration is Brazilian Brazilian delegation. They provided December 9 as a anti-corruption day, but this year, uniting the world against corruption is a theme. So these theme and other facts you may have, but on the other hand, for essays, you can, as I mentioned before, you can use it in various other purposes. Yeah. And similarly, you can have G20 linked to it. So G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group, we formed it in 2010. And similarly, you can just list down some steps taken in India to curb corruption, right? So these forms of corruption is important. You can use this in various forums because this is a legally provided definition of UN convention. Though they haven't defined the corruption completely, but they have given various forms of corruption. Okay? So this is one important thing what we have. Fine. So they define activities of corruption or act of corruption, right? Because the comprehensive definition is not much possible. That's the reason why they had. But so the last one is the International Court of Justice. Why it came into news? Usually, ICJ will not take up genocide. So genocide is a usual thing of ICC, International Criminal Court. But for the first time in the history of ICJ, they took up genocide and they ruled that the prima facie case is there under UN Charter because UN Charter is the one which has to be upheld by the ICJ. So they said under UN Charter, human rights part. So naturally, the genocide under Genocide Convention of UN Charter. So it is applicable. So they took the case and they said the Israel has to provide some relief to that humanitarian aid in Gaza and so on. So those issues happened. Okay. So this is a basic idea. So the main idea or the main question here will be with the functions. Okay. Or what type of cases ICJ can take. So that will be the actual question, what you can expect. Try to list down what cases it can take up. Okay. So generally they take up disputes between states. Okay. And they have advisory opinions on interpretation of law. So remember, in certain areas they are binding. So where the binding comes in judgments. Whereas in case of interpretation of law, it is just an advisory opinion, not a legal binding thing, because they are not the Supreme Court. They are just the International Court of Justice. Understood? So difference is there. So it consists of 15 judges and their term of office is for 9 years and 1/3 of them every 3 years they get elected. All these are fine. But the thing is, only states can contest cases here, no individuals. Neither individuals can file, nor the court can try individuals. Okay, so that's the idea. It happens in this particular way. Yeah. Fine. So this is what we have on part of United Nations establishment. United Nations organ ICJ, which was established in 1945 in Hague. Fine. Okay. So these are all certain areas. So remember what cases they can take. That's the actual question, what you can expect. And limitations, yes, you can have it. And you can see to this. So this is not a for individuals. It is not a criminal court. It is not a Supreme Court. It is not a last resort. All these factors are there. But whatever it is, most probably the question lies in this particular function because for the first time they had it in this particular way. Clear? Fine. So these are some of the areas which are important with regard to international conventions and declarations in this week. Okay. So on next class, on Wednesday, we will try to discuss other important events in the international events part. Yeah. Thank you.